Welcome to Kitchen Conversation with Lisa and Sterling. Now today, Sterling and I are going to discuss an article that was published in IFST from Kitchen Conversation on food hygiene ratings. So Sterling, what's the main point that you put across in the article?
Well, I think the Food Hygiene Rating Scheme works, and it's liked by businesses because it demonstrates they're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. It's definitely liked by regulators because it gives them a tool to improve standards. And it's also liked by consumers. They can make an informed choice of the places they eat. However...
Yeah, one of the problems I see is that consumers actually think that businesses are inspected every year.
Yeah, and I think the problem is I wonder if this scheme is still sustainable in the way that the model's being worked at the moment.
Yeah.
And when I speak to lots of people, they are starting to look for those labels to get some assurance about where they're eating, but they think those labels are less than a year old.
Yeah.
And we've seen some horror stories of some being 6 to 10 years old.
Yeah, and they go a funny colour, don't they?
Yeah.
They go blue instead of green when they get old.
And the other thing is, you're lucky if you can see them in England, because the very premises you're trying to avoid don't show them. And all the research has shown, intuitively, that if you've got a really low score, you don't tend to put it in the window. You're not going to frighten off customers.
Absolutely not. It's quite funny, actually. Once when I was in St Albans in the traffic jam, I went past this very good butcher, and he had a 3 rating in the window one day. And then I went past the next day and he'd taken it down.
And there's been a lot of research done that demonstrates that in countries like Northern Ireland and Wales, where it's mandatory for you to put it in a prominent place, surprise, surprise, more of the people who have got lower ratings put it in the window because they have to. And unless that's solved in England, I think consumers will be given a cheap deal.
Well, it has to be fair for all, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I'm concerned about is that we need to take this opportunity, this sort of pause that we've had, really, because of Brexit. Let's face it, that's why we haven't actually got any legislation yet in England, because that sort of got in the way. But I think we need to take this pause to think, how can we actually make this better? And how can we rule out some of the difficulties that are faced by everybody involved, really. The fact that consumers get the wrong end of the stick because they think they're refreshed every year. Businesses, very, very concerned in my role, the feedback I'm getting has always been inconsistency of enforcement. And that's going to be difficult anyway if you think about the thousands of different EHOs and everything else, and they're using a professional judgment, although we do have a brand standard. But I think one of the problems businesses have is this difficulty of not being able to appeal to an independent body.
And I think that's one of the things the FSA has talked about. But it's interesting you mentioned there, Lisa, the thousands of EHOs. And I think one of the biggest issues, there are fewer and fewer of them.
Well, yes.
And my concern is that the FSA are writing checks that local authorities can't cash with. People are very cash strapped, they've got lots of other priorities, and they're just simply not adequately funded to actually carry out the inspections. And I think that is what's undermining the scheme, is that as it gets longer and longer between somebody having the opportunity to appeal or to keep their score up to date, I just think the scheme will lose all credibility. If people knew how long it was since the last inspection, I think they'd be shocked.
Yes, I think that is true. One of the things that we did at UK Hospitality was to actually improve the chance of a business getting a re-inspection in a more timely way by putting pressure on to allow for businesses to pay for a revisit. But of course, the thing is that only happens if the local authority wants to do it and is set up to do that and has the resources to even provide a visit, even though it's paid for. They may not even have the number of staff to sort that out. So it is a bit of a postcode lottery. So some businesses can get a revisit more quickly, and others it's going to take longer. And I think the actual fantastic advantage of this scheme is if businesses can have a second chance, if when they find out they've done something wrong, they can put it right straight away. We immediately have an improvement in standards, and the business gets rewarded in a timely way by an improved score. But the last thing you want is for people to have a really terrible score, sort the problem out, and then sit on that score for another 10 years. It would just be worthless to them.
Yeah, and what we're trying to give is consumers greater visibility. So if it has a poor score and then is improved, I think consumers want that information. My concern with local authorities are that some people are now looking at this as a chance for an income stream. And I've seen some authorities are offering a pre-visit before they do the FHR scheme visit. And they're charging money for that. And I wonder if that is a conflict of interest, like employ us, pay us, and then we'll help you pass the scheme. And it's been argued that it's improving standards, but in my eyes, I still think that's a bit of a kind of gamekeeper turned poacher, and it's a dangerous path for local authorities to go down. They should focus on regulation where they can add real value to the...
I think this is a real problem, and I have actually taken it up with one local authority because some of our members at UK Hospitality were concerned about it. And they say that they do have it in sort of silos. They have a conflict of interest statement. They make sure that there isn't a conflict. But I think it could still be perceived by the outside world to be a potential conflict of interest. However, one of the things they have said is that businesses actually really like to have that arrangement where they can get someone in before they get the visit.
I can see that, but when you say get somebody in, there's lots of people in the private sector that can offer a similar service. To me, it's that conflict of interest, and I'm sure people are trying to do it the right way, but in the court of public opinion, if the public thought, well, my local authority is getting paid to get them through that visit, so there won't be any prosecutions, there won't be any notices because it's all working hand in hand, I think, again, it's things that erode a very good scheme that really worry me. This credibility of the flagship of the FSA and its partners in local authorities is eroded in any way, I think everyone will suffer. Consumers will suffer, businesses will suffer, and more important to me, I think regulators will suffer because they've lost a very useful tool.
I think that's true. And if you look at the way that other schemes, accreditation schemes are run, you can't have consultancy and sort of semi-enforcement in the same silo. So I think they do need to be very separated out. And of course, there are plenty of private sector EHOs, even independent ones, not associated with big companies, who may be perfectly easily engaged to do this sort of work, even via the local authority, but independently from the local authority. So I think that would be a really good thing to explore.
And I think you still get the funding issue. So to me, the scheme is falling down because of funding. And I think unless that's addressed, whatever happens won't work. And that's why I think we should look at licensing again. I think if a licensing scheme was introduced, so nobody could just open up a food shop without somebody giving it a license first, it could fund EHO visits from the local authority rather than cash-strapped local authorities trying to take resources from other areas. So to me, licensing is everything. It means you can't open until you're right, and if you can't meet the license, you're closed.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with licensing is it almost involves a pre-inspection anyway. So that's that. I mean, that was considered at the Regulating Our Future workshops. But then again, things changed. We couldn't have any primary legislation coming in because of the referendum vote. And really, that's sort of, I think that has put us back so far. It may well be that they will bring that up again once there's more certainty about what's happening. But I think everybody's been so busy with everything else that a lot of these great initiatives and ideas, I mean, I really did think that we were going to get to a point of more or less licensing or enhanced registration, as it's being called. And then it's all gone quiet again, which I think is a terrible shame. That was such a good opportunity. Why should businesses actually start up if they're not adequately trained, have the food safety management system and are ready to go in a safe way?
And when you speak to the public, Lisa, that's what they think is going on. That's the worst thing. If people believe those stops and checks are in place.
Catch up with us for part 2 of this kitchen conversation.